Hey everyone, welcome back to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. We're going to be looking at the updates for fall of 2024 and winter of 2024 and 2025 in today's video. So make sure to subscribe to the channel down below if you have not already, and you can help me get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the video. If you do click that subscribe button, make sure to like the video by giving it a thumbs up down below if you do especially like the video at the end, and leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll always get to those after the video. So let's dive right in, and you can see right now this is the index showing you what state of climate we are in here. The positive numbers show you El Nino, especially once you get to +1 and higher. Once you get to 0, that is ENSO neutral conditions, all the way down to -0.5, and then once you get to -1 or lower, those are La Nina conditions. So notice we're at -0.78. We are still in the middle of neutral conditions at this time, but the Climate Prediction Center, the latest probabilities they had out earlier on this month, have that reaching 71% by the time we get to next month in October. La Nina taking over at 81% possibly as we go into November, and then peaking at around 84% as we go into December. So that is very interesting to note as we do get closer to the fall and the winter months there. So looking here at the sea surface temperature anomalies in degrees Celsius, you can notice that we do have those colder water temperatures near the equatorial Pacific, and these are going to become a lot colder the deeper we go into fall here and the deeper we get into winter, and that means our La Nina conditions are going to start to take over because of that. Obviously, if we had warmer sea surface temperatures here in the equatorial Pacific, that means El Nino conditions would be in place, but we don't have that. We have cooler water temperatures, so that means La Nina can be expected. So let's go through with your fall update month by month here. Through the month of October, that starts in just a couple of days, you can see we actually do have some warmer conditions expected across the Rockies and out west, but in general, across North America, October looks to be a lot warmer than normal, so fall will continue warm across North America. We do see some drier weather, though, across the east. It's been pretty dry so far this fall through September, and it will continue to be so across the Eastern U.S. and Eastern Canada as we go through the month of October. A little bit wetter, though, across the west, so Alaska, British Columbia, and the west coast of the United States could get some more action as we go into October for wetter conditions. Southern Florida and maybe even the Gulf Coast could see some action as well with more tropical activity into October, so wetter conditions expected there and possibly up the East Coast. Going into November, looks like a pretty warm November compared to normal. Now, do take this into account that our November average highs are much lower than, say, for example, August. So even though we're above normal in November, doesn't mean we can't have any cold days. So keep that in mind. But overall, when you average all the days out in November, it looks warmer than normal, especially across the central and eastern U.S., also central and eastern Canada, and up here into Alaska as well. Looking at November, the precipitation starts to get a little bit more above average, trending above average for Alaska, for the west coast, the Pacific Northwest in particular. Southeastern Canada starts to get a little bit more active, and we start to dry out a little bit more down here in the southeast, along the Gulf Coast, and down toward the southern plains, the Four Corners region starting to get a little drier there in November. Now let's look at your winter update here, because I'm sure all you folks are wanting to know how cold, how snowy will it be this winter? Well, La Nina conditions are likely, if not expected at this point, and with this La Nina pattern, this means we're going to have a variable polar jet stream lifting all the way up here into Alaska and then dropping down into Canada and into the United States. This is going to bring some cold air and possibly some extreme cold air events down into the United States from Siberia and the Arctic. So that is something to keep in mind. And if that does coincide with our moisture expected with this pattern in the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes Midwest, also the Pacific Northwest, we could be in for a nice snowy winter this year. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, although drier and warmer conditions are expected with La Ninas further off to the south and southeast. Let's look at weak La Nina episodes, and this is a long-term average, and you can see we're expecting a weak La Nina this year, and it does trend colder across the upper Midwest and the northern plains, and really out west in general, and a little bit warmer than normal near the Gulf Coast, say New Orleans, Gulfport, Mississippi, Mobile, all the way over here toward Tallahassee and Jacksonville. Those areas are trending a little bit warmer in that long-term average when we have weak La Nina episodes. Looking at precipitation, very dry it is in California during weak La Ninas. So the Sacramento Valley down here, so Los Angeles, Fresno, Sacramento, and the San Francisco areas, San Diego, a lot of these areas will be trending drier. Same thing in Las Vegas and Phoenix, going to be trending drier probably this winter season. Same thing over here in the southeast coast as well. So Raleigh, Charlotte, down there to Myrtle Beach, all the way down into the Miami area, Tallahassee, New Orleans, going to be trending drier likely this winter. Wetter though across places like Detroit, Indianapolis, Chicago, St. Louis, all the way down to Nashville, Little Rock, and potentially even Dallas, Fort Worth as well during weak La Nina events. So let's look here at what this forecast update shows. For December, looks pretty warm to start off the winter. So, and again, the average high temperature in December is much colder than we say in August. So doesn't mean we can't see cold days in here, but it means that December is going to be trending warmer than normal this year. So the first half of winter here might actually be quite warm and mild. But I wouldn't rule out some decent snow events for the Rockies or the Pacific Northwest, and especially the higher elevations, or some snowstorms potentially up here in the north central U.S., but maybe more ice and a mix of precipitation with a little bit warmer air for the month of December, maybe more rain events too. But as we go into January, notice we have this big pocket of cold air traveling from Alaska down here into the western U.S. That could actually spell trouble for the northern U.S. potentially with maybe a polar vortex event, sudden stratospheric warming event. That's something to keep an eye on during the second half of winter once we get into January, likely the second half of January, matter of fact. But it does look pretty mild across most of the United States there in January overall during those 31 days. Looking at the classic La Nina pattern, we have very wet conditions all the way up in Alaska, Western Canada, especially for British Columbia. So you folks over in Vancouver in January could have wet times as well, maybe snowy times. And then across the Pacific Northwest, and then the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes Midwest region, interior New England will likely have a storm track that will have repeated rounds of precipitation. That could be in all forms of snow, rain, or ice. So that will be something to keep an eye on, but trending drier for the southeast coast and the Gulf Coast all the way back to Texas and Oklahoma for the month of January. Now going over into February, we still have that cold pocket up here into the Western Canada region. So that does mean that maybe another sudden stratospheric warming event will be possible in the month of February, or an extension of that from the second half of January into February. But also looking at probably some melting across portions of the central U.S. at some point during the second half of winter, whether that's in February or March. We'll keep an eye on that. Precipitation wise, February could be a big month for snowfall, for winter precipitation across the Pacific Northwest and across the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Midwest, the Northeast. Some of those areas could get in on a lot of that winter precipitation. And then looking at March finally, you can see I think March we start to trend a little bit warmer. That could be our thawing period at the end of winter. So our winter this year could end up literally being January and February with some snow events in December and March, but it looks like March could still trend above normal with precipitation, and any deviation in our temperatures in March could mean the difference between heavy snow events, ice events, or rain. So we'll keep an eye on that, but it is trending wet across the east and across the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada, and of course drier across the southeast and the south, and then the desert southwest as we go into March. Let's look here at my forecast. The risk of a heavy snowstorm, this would be 8 inches or more of snow in one single storm between December 2024 and March 2025. You can see in the light blue, you have a 0 to a 25% chance. That's a low risk of that happening. In the medium blue, that is a medium risk at 25 to 50% chance of happening. And then in the dark blue here, you have a high risk of that, 50 to 75% chance of an 8-inch snowstorm or higher between, again, December 2024 and March 2025. This includes the cities of Green Bay, Des Moines, Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, Indianapolis, the Toledo region, all the way back to Kansas City, Lincoln, Nebraska, Omaha, all the way down here into Wichita, maybe even the Tulsa area as well. So that is something to keep an eye on as we go through the winter months this season. And And we did touch on the polar vortex and those sudden stratospheric warming events. If we do see those occur this winter, they could have a lot of cold air travel south across portions of Canada from Siberia and from the Arctic all the way down even into the central and southern U.S. even sometimes. So we'll keep a very close eye on that, especially again during the second half of winter. We're more focused on that from January into February at this point. Obviously, things can change, things can deviate, but we'll keep you very updated on that as we do get closer to this event. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, especially if you do like today's weather forecast and the forecast moving forward. We'll do more of these long-range outlooks. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. I'll always get to those after my videos, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day out there.